What in the blazes do you think you're doing, old man? Is that some cheap trinket you picked up from a street vendor? The voice, sharp and laced with undisguised contempt, sliced through the hushed air of the county courthouse. It belonged to Judge Malcolm Thorne, a man barely in his late 20s whose crisp, unblemished robes seemed to amplify his youthful arrogance. He sat perched behind a towering mahogany bench, glaring down at the figure before him. The old man, standing patiently before the bench, was a study in weathered dignity. His clothes, though clean, were faded and worn, the kind that spoke of a lifetime of honest, humble labor. His face, a roadmap of sun-kissed wrinkles, was framed by sparse white hair, but it was the single tarnished metal pinned precariously to his threadbare jacket that drew the judge's ire. It was a simple bronze star, its ribbon frayed, its surface dulled by the passage of time and countless stories untold. The veteran, for that was clearly what he was, held a battered cap in his gnarled hands, his posture stoic, his eyes fixed on some distant point beyond the judge's youthful fury. He offered no immediate reply, his silence a stark contrast to the judge's escalating impatience. It was a silence born of profound patience, of having seen and endured far greater storms than this petty courtroom squall. His gaze, though seemingly vacant, held the deep, unblinking stillness of an ancient sentinel, observing the transient follies of the young. A few spectators, mostly clerks, and a pair of curious local reporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing the escalating tension, the raw generational divide playing out before them. Judge Thorne, mistaking the old man's quietude for simple senility or defiance, leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. "I asked you a question, Granddad. Are you deaf or simply choosing to ignore the authority of this court?" He tapped a manicured finger impatiently on the polished wood. The old man finally stirred, a slow, deliberate movement. His lips parted, and a voice, surprisingly deep and resonant despite its age, rumbled softly, "It is a medal, sir, from my time in service." His words were calm, devoid of anger, merely stating a fact. It was a response that seemed to further fuel the judge's irritation, like throwing oil on a sputtering flame. "Your time in service?" Judge Thorne scoffed, a sneer twisting his lips. "And what service would that be, exactly? Did you bravely serve lemonade at the local fair? Or perhaps you were a particularly fierce gardener during the War of the Weeds?" His tone was dismissive, his words designed to wound, to diminish the quiet dignity of the old man. The veteran remained impassive, his gaze unwavering, betraying no outward sign of the insult. His worn hands, calloused and scarred, tightened imperceptibly around his cap, a silent testament to labors far beyond the judge's comprehension. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through his body, a brief echo of a distant memory. For a fleeting second, the bland walls of the courtroom dissolved, replaced by a blinding flash of desert sun, the acrid scent of burning cordite, the metallic taste of fear. He remembered the weight of a heavy pack, the relentless march, the desperate cries of men. He remembered holding a dying comrade, the warmth of blood on his hands, the silent promise made in the face of insurmountable odds. The memory, sharp and visceral, faded as quickly as it came, leaving him once more in the sterile courtroom, facing the judge's contempt. This internal struggle, this brief journey through the crucible of his past, was completely lost on Judge Thorne, who saw only an old man lost in thought, further evidence of his perceived inadequacy. "Look, I don't have all day for your fanciful tales," the judge continued, his voice rising in impatience. "This is a court of law, not a veterans' hall for exaggerated boasts. That medal, whatever it is clearly in violation of court decorum. Either remove it, or I will have the bailiff remove you." He gestured imperiously towards the burly bailiff, who shifted uncomfortably, his gaze darting between the irate judge and the unmoving veteran. The bailiff, a burly man named Miller with a quiet respect for the elderly, felt a flicker of unease. There was something about the old man's stillness, his quiet strength, that belied the judge's crude assessment. He'd seen plenty of veterans, and this one possessed a certain gravity, a silent power that made him hesitate. But orders were orders, especially from a judge notorious for his short temper. Yet the old man stood his ground, his gaze now directed squarely at the judge, a profound sorrow etched into his ancient features. "It is a combat medal, sir," the veteran reiterated, his voice a low rumble, carrying an unexpected weight that cut through the judge's bluster. "Awarded for valor above and beyond the call of duty." His words, though simple, resonated with a quiet authority that caused a ripple through the small audience. Judge Thorne, however, was past the point of listening, his youthful ego, inflamed by what he perceived as insubordination, refused to acknowledge any challenge to his authority. "Valor?" he sneered, pushing back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Tell me, old soldier, what exactly did you do to earn such a grand distinction? Did you bravely face down a particularly vicious squirrel in your backyard?" A snicker escaped from one of the reporters, quickly stifled by a stern look from the other. The judge's mockery hung in the air, a cruel, discordant note in the solemn chamber. The veteran's eyes, which had held that distant, knowing look, now narrowed almost imperceptibly. A flicker of something akin to hurt, quickly masked by a deeper resolve, passed through them. His gnarled fingers, still gripping the cap, now trembled with a barely contained emotion. He remembered another courtroom, not one of law, but of fire and chaos. He remembered being pinned down, the screams of his men echoing in his ears, the impossible choice he had to make. He remembered crawling through enemy fire, pulling wounded comrades to safety, the burning agony in his own leg, ignoring it because there were lives at stake. He remembered the face of his commanding officer, tears in his eyes, pinning this very medal to his blood-soaked uniform, his words a solemn testament to courage and sacrifice. This medal, a piece of bronze and frayed ribbon, was not just an award. It was a physical manifestation of a profound promise, a sacred memory. To have it so casually, so cruelly dismissed, was a deeply personal affront. The bailiff, Miller, watching the old man's subtle shift, felt a prickle of alarm. He recognized that look, the quiet, unyielding fury of a man pushed too far. He cleared his throat, a subtle attempt to interject, but the judge was already barreling forward, caught in the intoxicating rush of his own power. "I am giving you one last chance, old man," Judge Thorne declared, his voice rising, a thinly veiled threat in his tone. "Remove that gaudy piece of metal, or I will hold you in contempt of court and have you removed by force. Do I make myself clear?" His hand slapped down on the bench, a sharp, echoing crack that punctuated his ultimatum. The veteran's silence was no longer passive. It was an active force, a profound stillness that defied the judge's bluster. His gaze, now firm and unblinking, met the judge's, holding a depth of experience that seemed to swallow the younger man's petulant arrogance whole. A thin, almost imperceptible line formed between his brows. He remembered being ordered to stand down, to save himself, but he had refused. He remembered the sheer, visceral instinct to protect his men, even at the cost of his own life. The medal was not merely a symbol of bravery, it was a testament to defiance, to choosing the harder, more honorable path. He had faced bullets, explosions, the raw, terrifying face of death. This young man's threats, his petty authority, were but a fly buzzing around an ancient oak. Yet his silence was misinterpreted by Judge Thorne as further defiance. The judge's face flushed crimson, his youthful pride stung by the veteran's unwavering composure. "Bailiff!" he barked, his voice cracking with rage. "Remove him!" And remove that thing from his jacket. As Bailiff Miller reluctantly took a step forward, his hand hovering uncertainly near the veteran's arm, a new voice, calm and commanding, suddenly cut through the tense atmosphere of the courtroom. "Stop!" The single word resonated with an authority that instantly silenced Judge Thorne, freezing Miller in his tracks. All heads turned towards the double doors at the back of the courtroom. Standing there, framed by the ornate doorway, was a figure of undeniable command. He was a man in his late 50s, his silver hair impeccably neat, his uniform crisp and adorned with a startling array of ribbons and medals. He wore the 4 stars of a general. General Maxwell Davies, a name known and respected throughout the military establishment, strode into the room, his gaze sweeping over the scene with an intensity that brooked no argument. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, fixed immediately on the veteran, then on the medal pinned to his chest. A flicker of recognition, profound and immediate, passed across his face. Judge Thorne, momentarily stunned by the unexpected intrusion, stammered, "General Davies, to what do we owe this unexpected visit?" His arrogance had evaporated, replaced by a nervous deference, his voice suddenly stripped of its earlier bravado. General Davies ignored him, his focus entirely on the old man. As he approached the veteran, the general executed a slow, perfectly rendered salute, his hand snapping to his brow with a reverence that was palpable. The veteran, without a moment's hesitation, returned the salute, his worn hand rising with a grace and precision that belied his age. It was a gesture understood only by those who had served, a silent language of respect and shared sacrifice. The weight of the moment, the sheer gravitas of the general's presence and his respectful salute, settled over the courtroom like a shroud, silencing every whisper, every restless movement. The air crackled with the sudden, profound shift in power dynamics, a palpable tension as the true significance of the old man began to dawn on a select few. General Davies lowered his hand, his gaze still fixed on the veteran, a profound respect etched into his features. He then turned his piercing eyes towards Judge Thorne, who visibly quailed under the intensity of his stare. "Judge Thorne," the general began, his voice low but carrying, each word a hammer blow, "I believe you were just about to demand that this man remove his medal or be removed from your courtroom by force." Thorne swallowed hard, his face paling. Your Excellency, You merely insulted a national hero, Judge," Davies interrupted, his voice hardening. "A man who has bled for this country, risked everything for the very freedoms you so casually preside over." He took another step closer to the veteran, his hand resting gently on the old man's shoulder, a gesture of comradeship that transcended rank. "This gaudy piece of metal, as you so disrespectfully called it, is the Congressional Medal of Honor." The words hung in the air, a collective gasp rippling through the courtroom. Congressional Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration for valor, awarded for acts of bravery and sacrifice above and beyond the call of duty, often at the risk of one's own life. It was a medal so rare, so sacred, that protocol demanded even the President of the United States salute its wearer. Judge Thorne's face, already pale, now turned an ashen white. He suddenly understood the depths of his transgression, the monumental insult he had hurled at a man whose shoes he was not worthy to tie. He stared at the veteran, his arrogant disdain transmuted into horrified shock, then a dawning, terrible shame. The veteran, however, remained impassive, his gaze once again distant, perhaps reliving the very moment he earned such an extraordinary honor. The courtroom was utterly silent, every eye fixed on the old man, who, in his faded clothes and quiet dignity, had been transformed in their eyes from a simple, bothersome elder into a living legend. Bailiff Miller, his face a mixture of awe and profound regret, felt a chill run down his spine. He had almost laid hands on a Medal of Honor recipient. The weight of his near misstep was a cold stone in his gut. The general then turned back to the court, his voice ringing with a solemn authority. "This man," he declared, his hand still on the veteran's shoulder, "is Master Sergeant John Bull Delaney, a living legend within our armed forces. He saved an entire company of men under unimaginable fire, a feat that earned him this medal, presented by the President himself." He paused, letting the full gravity of his words sink in. The dramatic irony was crushing, the arrogant judge now utterly exposed, his contemptuous words turned to ashes in his mouth. "Master Sergeant Delaney," General Davies continued, his voice softer now, imbued with a deep reverence as he addressed the veteran directly. "I understand you were here to witness a simple probate case. I apologize profusely for the disrespect you have endured in this courtroom today. It is an insult not just to you, but to every man and woman who has ever worn the uniform." He then turned back to Judge Thorne, his eyes blazing with a righteous fury. "Judge, you have disgraced this court, your office, and the very principles of respect and honor that this nation stands upon. To mock a Medal of Honor recipient, to demand the removal of such a sacred symbol of sacrifice, it is unforgivable." Judge Thorne, slumped in his chair, could barely meet the general's gaze. His youthful confidence had crumbled entirely, replaced by a devastating humiliation. His legal career, he realized in that agonizing moment, was likely over. The reporters, sensing the magnitude of the story, furiously scribbled notes, their pens scratching loudly in the stunned silence. Master Sergeant Delaney, however, surprisingly intervened. He gently placed his hand on General Davies' arm, his worn fingers surprisingly firm. "General," he rumbled softly, his voice still low, but with a new, quiet authority that commanded attention. The young man, he did not know. He merely lacked understanding. His gaze, filled with an ancient wisdom, settled on the trembling judge, not with anger, but with a profound, almost paternal sorrow. "Ignorance is a heavy burden, but it can be lifted with knowledge." General Davies, though still seething, nodded slowly, acknowledging the profound humility and forgiveness of the old warrior. It was a testament to Master Sergeant Delaney's character, a man who, even after being subjected to such an egregious insult, still chose compassion over condemnation. The general turned to the bailiff. "Bailiff Miller, escort Judge Thorne from the bench. His tenure here, I believe, has come to an abrupt and ignominious end. He will face a full review of his conduct by military judicial command, given his disparagement of a Medal of Honor recipient." Miller, his face grim, approached the shell-shocked judge, who offered no resistance as he was led away, his robes suddenly seeming too heavy, too grand for his now humbled posture. The immediate aftermath was a blur of apologies and solemn declarations. Master Sergeant Delaney was escorted from the courtroom by General Davies himself, a quiet procession that garnered salutes from every uniformed person present and awed silence from the rest. The general, realizing the profound disruption and insult, personally took the veteran to a quiet office within the courthouse, offering him a hot meal and the respect he was so unequivocally due. The news of Judge Thorne's disgrace and Master Sergeant Delaney's true identity spread like wildfire, a cautionary tale whispered in legal circles and blazoned across local headlines. The young judge was, indeed, stripped of his position, not just for his contemptuous behavior, but for his profound lack of judgment and respect. His judicial career, which had just begun, ended in ignominy, a harsh lesson in humility and the often hidden depths of human experience. Months later, a quiet, almost unnoticed meeting took place in a small, unassuming diner on the outskirts of town. Master Sergeant Delaney sat at a booth, sipping a cup of coffee, his familiar faded medal now polished and proudly displayed. The door opened and a figure dressed in plain civilian clothes hesitated at the entrance. It was Malcolm Thorne, no longer a judge, his face etched with humility and the hard-won wisdom of profound consequence. He approached the table cautiously, his hands clasped nervously before him. "Master Sergeant Delaney," he began, his voice soft, almost a whisper, I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, my arrogance, my ignorance. There are no words to express my shame for how I treated you that day." Delaney looked up, his ancient eyes kind, devoid of any lingering resentment. He gestured to the seat opposite him. "Sit, young man. We all make mistakes. The measure of a man is not in avoiding error, but in how he learns from it." Thorne sat, his gaze fixed on the table, still unable to meet the veteran's eyes. "I've been volunteering, learning, trying to understand what true service means." "Good," Delaney responded, his voice a low, comforting rumble. "Understanding is the first step towards wisdom." He looked at Thorne, a hint of a gentle smile playing on his lips. "You judged a book by its cover, young man. A common human failing, but one that can be overcome with an open heart and a willingness to see beyond appearances." He then recounted for the first time in detail the events that led to his Medal of Honor, not with boasting, but with a solemn reverence for the men he served with, the sacrifices made, the sheer terror and the unwavering resolve forged in the crucible of battle. He spoke of the camaraderie, the profound bond of brotherhood, the weight of command, and the quiet dignity of simply enduring. Thorne listened, utterly captivated, a newfound respect dawning in his eyes, washing away the last vestiges of his former arrogance. He saw not just a war hero, but a man of profound character, of boundless forgiveness. The diner, with its clatter of dishes and murmur of conversations, seemed to fade, replaced by the vivid landscapes of Delaney's memories, the echoes of distant gunfire, the stark beauty of courage. When Delaney finished, a long silence settled between them, a silence now filled not with tension but with understanding. Thorne looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you, Master Sergeant," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for sharing your story and for your incredible grace." Delaney simply nodded, reaching across the table to gently pat Thorne's hand. "Go now and live a life worthy of the lessons you have learned. And remember, true honor is found not in the medals we wear, but in the humility and respect we show to all, especially to those whose stories we do not yet know." Their reconciliation was complete, a quiet testament to the enduring power of forgiveness and the transformative strength of wisdom gained through humility. Master Sergeant Delaney continued to live his quiet, unassuming life, often found tending his small garden or sharing stories with other veterans at the local Legion Hall. Yet his presence now carried a different weight in the community. No longer simply an old man, he was a living monument, a quiet reminder of courage, sacrifice, and the profound lessons of humility. Judge Thorne, stripped of his robes and his legal career, embarked on a new path, dedicating his life to serving veterans, working tirelessly in outreach programs, ensuring that no old soldier ever faced the kind of disrespect he himself had so cruelly dished out. His arrogance had been broken, replaced by a deep-seated empathy and a lifelong commitment to making amends. He often visited Delaney, not as a former judge seeking absolution, but as a humbled student, eager to learn from the veteran's profound well of wisdom. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of public humiliation and quiet forgiveness, became a powerful testament to redemption. The story of the judge and the veteran became a local legend, passed down in hushed tones, a poignant reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and true valor often resides in the most unexpected of places. It served as a stark lesson. Never underestimate the quiet strength of those who carry the weight of untold histories, and always, always extend respect, for you never know the battles another person has fought, nor the honors they may silently bear. It taught that true authority is earned through service and humility, not merely by position. Dear viewer, this tale of Master Sergeant Delaney and Judge Thorne is a profound reminder that respect is not merely a courtesy, but a fundamental pillar of human decency. It teaches us the perils of quick judgment, the sting of arrogance, and the transformative power of humility. In a world that often values youth and superficial success, let us remember to honor the wisdom of our elders and to recognize the hidden valor that often walks among us in unassuming forms. This story is more than just a dramatic confrontation. It's a call to look deeper, to listen more intently, and to treat every individual with the inherent dignity they deserve, for you never truly know the depth of their journey or the weight of their sacrifice. Always remember, the true measure of a person is not found in their outward appearance or their perceived status, but in the quiet strength of their character, the wisdom they carry, and the battles they have fought, often unseen, for the greater good. Let this narrative inspire you to cherish those who have served, to extend grace where there is ignorance, and to always, always uphold the principles of respect and honor. If this story touched your heart, if it made you pause and reflect, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of profound human experience. Your support helps us share these vital stories with a wider audience, ensuring that such lessons are never forgotten. Thank you for watching, and may you carry the spirit of respect and humility into every encounter.